sometimes forget where you guys are sometimes. Joshua. We're going to start something a little bit different. It's a different series, so it's worded a little bit differently. The information is expressed a little bit differently. So let's just let's see how it goes. I have not read this yet. Um, I have kind of flipped through it, so let's get started. Let's start with Joshua. Again, this one is from Explore the Bible, and it comes from Lifeway. The commission. We can't say for certain who the author of the book of Joshua is because he's not explicitly identified in the Bible. If Joshua didn't originally compose the book that bears his name, then it may be presumed that someone who personally knew him recorded the work. Although much of the book may have been written during Joshua's lifetime, numerous references throughout the book of Joshua make clear that the book was finalized after his lifetime, including the description of his death and people, places, or memorials that remain to this day. Joshua lived and led Israel sometime between 1490 and 1380 BC. Joshua succeeded Moses and became Israel's leader during tumultuous times. He led the Israelites out of Moab, across the Jordan River, and into the Promised Land. Joshua had a great military mind. With the conquering of the centrally located cities of Jericho and Ai, he divided the Promised Lands into halves. He conquered the southern half, the cities around Jerusalem, before turning his attention to the north, the city of Hazor, Hazor. Once the land was conquered, Joshua divided it among the 12 tribes. The Israelites remained faithful to the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime. The book of Joshua demonstrates that the Lord keeps his promises. To Abraham, God promised, "To you and your future offspring, I will give you the land where you are residing." Centuries later, Joshua and the Israelites would once again live in the Promised Land. This book also illustrates that the Lord gives rest to his people. After more than 400 years of slavery in Egypt, the Israelites could enjoy God's rest in the land of promise. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, N-U-N, who had served Moses. "Moses, my servant, is dead. Now you and all the people prepare to cross over the Jordan to the land I am giving the Israelites. I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads, just as I promised Moses. Your territory will be from the wilderness and Lebanon to the great Euphrates River, all the land of the Hittites, and west to the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand against you as long as I live. I will be with you, just as I was with Moses. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you will distribute the land I swore to their fathers to give them as an inheritance. Above all, be strong and very courageous to carefully observe the whole instruction my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn it from the right or the left, so that you will have success wherever you go. This book of instruction must not depart from your mouth. You are to recite it day and night, so that you may carefully observe everything written in it. For then you will prosper and succeed in whatever you do. Haven't I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." That is Joshua 1, verses 1 through 9. The first chapter of Joshua serves as a transition from the preceding book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy concluded with the death and burial of Moses. The book of Joshua begins. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua. "No prophet has arisen again in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. Consequently, the Israelites undoubtedly experienced anxiety about the identity of Moses' successor. Who would lead them now? Could this person be as effective as Moses? The Lord prepared Joshua for such a task. Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. Deuteronomy 34:9. As a constant companion to Moses, Joshua had the opportunity to observe Moses' leadership, style, and decision making approach, as well as his spiritual strengths and weaknesses. From an early period, the Lord readied Joshua for this particular time and need. Joshua proved to be a gifted leader. He molded 12 loosely connected tribes into a respected, even feared military. He led the Hebrews to victory after victory against superior numbers and fortified cities. We recognize Joshua's military prowess because his ambush at Ai is one of the earliest examples of such a tactic in military history. After conquering the land, Joshua successfully divided it among the tribes and led them as they began to transition to an agricultural, non-nomadic lifestyle. What greater acclaim might be attributed to any leader other than the fact that Israel worshipped Yahweh, which is Yahweh, through Joshua's lifetime? Moses, who knew the Lord in such an unusual manner, face to face, according to Deuteronomy 34:10, led the Israelites out of Egypt and out of the bondage in which they had suffered for 430 years. The Lord gave the Israelites the law through Moses, as well as instructions for the construction of the tabernacle and the worship that was to take place in it. Moses led the Israelites through the 40-year wilderness wandering. He led them to the plains of Moab, east of the Jordan River, on the cusp of entering the Promised Land. Doubtless, the Israelites joyfully anticipated crossing the Jordan River, and entering the land the Lord had promised their forefathers. The death of Moses must have suppressed much of this joy. While Moses is described as the Lord's servant, Joshua is described as one who had served Moses. This participle in the original text is a different word from the noun previously translated as servant. This word communicates the idea of a chief assistant. Joshua didn't serve Moses as a slave, but as an assistant. Moses, my servant, is dead. Now you and all the people prepare to cross over the Jordan to the land I am giving the Israelites. I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads, just as I promised Moses. With the announcement that Moses was dead, God alerted his people to the present and pointed them to the future. The Lord communicated his plan as though the victory had already been accomplished. The Israelites had to fight for the land, but God had promised the land to Moses, leaving no doubt as to their victory. Verse 4, your territory will be from the wilderness in Lebanon to the great Euphrates River, all the land of the Hittites, and west to the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand against you as long as I live. I will be with you, just as I was with Moses. I will not leave you or forsake you. The expanse of the land must have been difficult for many of the Israelites to fathom. Fewer than 50 years earlier, the ancestors of these same Hebrews dwelled as slaves in Egypt. Now they would have their own land, a large land. The Hebrew name Joshua means Yahweh in salvation. Yahweh is salvation. So, Y-A-H, W-E-H is salvation. I'll even put it up there. So, the Hebrew name Joshua means Yahweh is salvation. The name Jesus is the Greek form of the name Joshua. The name Jesus is the Greek form of the name Joshua. As God gave the promised land to the Hebrews, he gave his son to all humankind. Jesus, by his death and resurrection, offers salvation to everyone who believes. I was just thinking, I have a brother named Joshua. So I was just, oh, that's cute. The Hebrew verb translated be strong communicates the idea of physical strength. Joshua needed to be physically strong for the grueling events of the immediate future. Oh, we're almost done. The second verb, translated be courageous, communicates the idea of confidence. Joshua would soon face the fortified city of Jericho. The Lord instructed him to wage war not with sword and shield, but with trumpets or ram's horns. Where would Joshua find the boldness to undertake this task in such an unexpected, even irrational manner? He would find boldness in the fact that the Lord had commissioned him and promised to be with him. Both of these verbs, be strong and courageous, are commands in the original Hebrew. The Lord didn't merely just ask Joshua to be strong and courageous. The Lord commanded Joshua to be strong and courageous. Our time is up. So the next time we are going to be starting, I guess, learning about him and his Jericho adventure. Thank you. I'm sorry for all the clicking and clacking and slurping. It is 3:15 in the morning and I am like surrounded by animals. This little guy is like in my lap and this is Ashki. And then I've got Joy who's just like, I think she needs to go out, so I'm going to handle that. And the other one managed to go over to the couch. So let me handle all these animals and get myself in bed. So it was fun we're beginning Joshua, and I hope you hang in there with me, and we're just going to kind of keep digging. I'm going to keep going into a couple different books. If there's one in particular that you want to dig into, I can always do that. So I think I want to read The War Room very soon. But let's do Joshua for a little while and see where that goes. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I hope you come back soon.